the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
If the government manages your protest, if it oversees, guides, controls, and hovers over and makes pathways for your demonstration, your political demonstration, what have you, do you have free speech? Well, we in Tennessee, we don't want to have free speech. We want to have managed speech, just as we don't want to have free trade. We want to have managed trade, just as we don't want to have a free market. We want to have public-private combinations to favor selected parties, such as ball teams in Chattanooga. We want to have a multi-billion-dollar plan in Nashville to favor construction firms, architectural firms, and those that will be making a killing in Mayor Megan Barry's proposal, more than $5 billion worth, to have a subway system in the city, in the state's capital. Well, this is David Tulis, and I'm glad you're giving me just a minute of your time. I think the idea of the protest in Murfreesboro and Shelbyville Saturday is an idea that I want to tell you about in a way different than what you've heard reported. You're celebrating, probably as other members of the media are, the fact that no one got hurt. One man was arrested for disorderly conduct. He was a counter-protester who said he wanted to have a conversation with those on the other side, and he made what a police official said was a threatening gesture, and was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct. He was a counter-protester, and he wanted to have a conversation. Now, that man, whatever his ideas might be, whether left or right, I want to hold up as an example of someone who has a commendable opinion. And that is that a protest and a demonstration is about giving an opinion, right? It's about making your view known, whether you're a fascist, anarchist, communist, or whether you are a pro-South, independence-minded, pro-white nationalist. On those are the two sides apparently in the demonstrations this weekend. Whatever your view is, the fact that you are there and you want to have an argument, I think is commendable. That's what demonstrations are. A demonstration is making an argument and standing behind it, right? Throwing words out into the public square and being there in your body, in your person, with your bones, your flesh, and your skin, and your hair, and your nose, and your eyes, and your lips. They're spouting off your view, hurtling epithets perhaps across the way to somebody else. That is what a demonstration is. It is a showing of your position, and it is a standing behind your position. It is being photographed to have that position, carrying a sign with that position, a banner, having maybe a shield with a position on it. Maybe you've got, as the National Socialists have one photograph on Saturday, a photo with a kind of a cross on your shield. Those are demonstrations, right? You're making it clear what your view is, and you're joining with others, perhaps who may agree with you some or a lot, on one side of a demonstration. And then, as it turns out, in both cities there were far more counter demonstrators than there were people who were the initial permit holders. The permit holders were, in one case, League of the South, which is a pro-nationalist group favoring political decentralization, and that rally in let's see, that was Murfreesboro. There were about 30 pro-South and pro-white demonstrators, about 1,000 counter demonstrators, and in Shelbyville there were about 160 on the pro-white side, or the pro-Confederate side, and about 400 counter protesters. So they were outnumbered, but the story I think that deserves telling is not so much of what the two sides are arguing. They have different perspectives, and in many ways both are on the same side. Both the fascists and the anti-fascists are on the same side, and it's hard to call League of the South a fascist group. It's hard to call it even a hate group, even though the Southern Poverty Law Center puts it on its hate list, right? A list that is dutifully reported on by the AP, the Washington Post, and the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, all that view that group of bigots in Alabama as an authority on dissenters, right? And dissenters, by the SPLC standards are all those who are not pro-progressive, or just say, I don't say pro-progressive, I'd say progressive. Progressive, if you are a Christian, a Southerner, pro-Confederate, a neo-Confederate, an old-time Confederate, an unreconstructed Southerner, or a white nationalist, or even some parts of that assembly would include neo-Nazis. Some of those parties really are in agreement with the anti-fascists. The anti-fascists are fascists, and the neo-Nazis, of course, are national socialists. They want socialism, and as we read about them here when they came to Chattanooga, they are simply brothers having a feud, and no one really defends the free market. No one of those groups really defend constitutional government. I would say perhaps the League of the South is the one that has the most honorable perspective. It is one that is very honorable and views the idea of having peace in the country, peace on the continent, in terms of having a breakup of the country, and letting people go their own way. Why force ourselves upon others? Why have them force themselves upon us if we have a different opinion? And if we have enough public support for an independent South, well, then let that happen. And if we want to have progressive states unite together in a progressive federated republic, the New England states perhaps, or the Western states perhaps, let them all unite and share in the wealth of socialism, which of course we know is very, very great. If you want to have wealth and prosperity, make sure you have socialism, because that's the promise of the welfare state. And bureaucratism is, of course, wealth for all. And maybe those people who break off might have their own universal basic income proposal floated and actually voted on and imposed. Well, the story out of Shelbyville and Murfreesboro is about the end of free speech. Now, we're used to this, and perhaps we're so used to it that we don't think what it really means to have your protest managed by the police. And there was a massive presence by the police, by sheriff's deputies, by state troopers, by the National Guard, by federal people also on scene, according to reports. In Murfreesboro, police kept the two groups separated. There were checkpoints for each side of the protest. Right, the protest area was marked off. There was no free speech zone. Right, if you have a free speech zone, you don't have free speech. If you have to have free speech in a particular zone, and you go on side A and your opponent goes on side B, and there are metal fences dividing the two groups, and there are metal fence alleyways to get in. You have to identify yourself as A or B. Then you're approved to get in. You have to go through a body check, a bag check. You can't have a weapon. You can't have a club. You can't have a shield. No contraband. Right? We have very strict rules on what you can have in your expression. And so we're going to have a protest, and there's a street down the middle between the two sides. Okay, this is our safety management of our police officials, and there are barricades separating the front row of one group, keeping that group away from the police, which are in a phalanx between the two, with clubs and helmets and masks and of course body armor. These cops all wear body armor to protect themselves, right, and secure public safety. And then on the other side, facing behind them, you have the other side. And somehow you're supposed to communicate across that great barrier, and you're supposed to have a conversation. The man who was arrested tried to do that. He just wanted to get in close to have something to say. His name is John Gill Anderson, and he took the left wing side, and he was arrested and charged with threatening behavior by Shelbyville cop Brian Cruz. He was Officer Brian Cruz, courageous officer. Arrested this man and charged him with disorderly conduct. And the quote from John Gill Anderson in the Tennessean newspaper is this: "I was hoping to have a productive conversation or argument." Now that of course is what local economy is all about. Have a productive conversation and argument, and the only way you can have that is to have it face to face. Right? That's what a demonstration is. You have it face to face with someone. And that's, you can't have that. You simply, when you have a police state, you simply cannot have that. You have to have lobbying of epithets and shouts and questions and statements and chants. You have to have that over and through the police. The police have to be there protecting everybody, and then you have the exchange of views. We really can't have an exchange of views in a police state. Shana Boyett, the Shelbyville city mayor, in the story in the Time Free Press this morning, says the positive outcome of this rally is a product of extensive planning, along with the ability to keep groups separated. And of course, there were state, federal, and local resources, as they're called, resources put there to keep people safe. And I think there's an alternative, and that's called local economy, the free market. And it's also the biblical alternative to the police state being the demonstration, right? It is. We have in these two cities a demonstration, and the storyline, the real storyline, is that the police kept order. The police kept the demonstrators from demonstrating effectively. If you can't demonstrate to someone, but you have to demonstrate in a void, then have you had a demonstration? Have you solved your problem in getting your message out? Do you have the sense of relief that you've had your say? Are you relieved that you've had your say? And the answer is no. Well, you're not relieved at all. You haven't communicated what you believe to anybody. And the people on the other side, the ones who are against you, you haven't had a chance to demonstrate to them and to tell them what you think. They haven't had a chance to read your sign because the police are there blocking the view and preventing a clear and unequivocal debate between the sides. I argue for local economy and the free market. My name is David Tulis, and we're here at 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. That's the very powerful digital signal, by the way. All new cars have digital signal. Make sure you keep us tuned. Again, it's 95.3 HD4. Just find that. It might take a minute to figure out how to get there, but HD is high definition digital 4 on channel 4. That's us, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD. Live on Facebook, by the way, on Nooga Radio, and live on YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio. There is a local economy alternative, and here's how it works. Here's how local economy really works. And it is based on what people heard at church yesterday, okay? It's what they heard in church yesterday. Of course, no one's hearing sermons about how this worked, and I'm waiting to find a pulpit in Chattanooga where the minister will explain the following. And it's this: in the old republic, right, in the Hebrew Republic, there was what we call a state today, but it was really just a court. You had the courts in the old Confederation, which all these 700 churches in Chattanooga with their thousands and thousands of adherents read about, study, pray about, remember, recall, and talk about. That is to say, old Israel, right? And the judicial principles, the principles of ethics that come from the Word of God and from that nation are valid today, and they're really binding today. And we had in that time, we had a passive state. We had a judicial state. The state, the king, the government, was not executive. It wasn't active. It was a reactive government. And that is to say, there was no crime unless there was a body, right? There was no crime unless there was a wound, a burned out house, stolen goods. That's called corpus delicti. There was a doctrine in which there was a crime, and if there was a crime, well, then the judges were there waiting to hear the case, right? The prosecutor was the private party, the injured party. He prosecuted the case, and the judge made a ruling, right? And the evidence was required for murder, except in the rape of a woman in a field. Except with that exception, murders had to be 2 witnesses for that, and you had the remedy, right? You had justice being delivered by the state. The state is passive and waiting. Why is that important? Well, that's important because if the state is passive and waiting, everything else is free, right? If there's no rule except equity, then all is free, all men are free. However, if there's a crime, an injury, a tort, or wrong, well, then the court is there waiting. The court is open, as Jerry Summers likes to say. The court is open. But we don't have that. We've done better than that. We have what's called executive government, activist government. We have government that is preemptive and peremptory. It controls things ahead of time, right? You're not free anymore. We have regulations for everything. We have permits for everything. We have a permit to have free speech, right? We have a permit to run the press. We have permits to run the media. Everything is permitted, and we don't have a free society. We're not a free people. And so what I'd like to suggest is this: if we had as I'm theorizing a more godly social order, a free social order, where government waits for there to be a crime, here's what I think you would have from the mayor of Shelbyville. Let's say the mayor of Shelbyville, living in a free Tennessee with a free government, as we have promised us in our Tennessee Constitution, we would maybe making a statement like this. Okay, the opposing forces, the Antifas and the Southern Nationalists are coming to your city. What do you say? What kind of announcement do you make? Well, here's what I think the mayor would say. Right, the mayor is not going to say we're promising security. No, there's no promise of security at all. In the state that's passive, there is no security. Right, there is only the court. Security is provided by people who are free and honorable people. They provide their own security, or if there's the fear of danger, they exempt themselves, they absent themselves from that place. They do not go there. Now, the mayor would say something like this: in times past, she would say, we've managed and controlled protests and counter protests, but now we understand that our role is different. Our role is not security; it is justice. And so we're not here to provide security, but we respect your rights, the rights of our residents and citizens, and the rights of people in our states who are protected by our Constitution as well. We respect their right to protest and to counter-protest, to shout and to argue all they want, and to have their say, to make a demonstration, for the demonstrations to be effective in their own minds, that they've completed the delivery of their point to the other side. We want to have that, and we're glad that these people, the Antifas and the Southern Nationalists, are here in our city. And we know that we live in the era of smartphones. We would like everyone to have a record of what they say and do. Everyone's smartphone should be running all the time. In fact, we as a civil service will provide charging outlets near and around the city, so people who are making film of their event can charge their phones. Since we know phones don't last that long, we're going to help you keep your phone charged. If there is a crime, we would like you to bring your visual evidence, your record of that crime, to our officers who are standing by in the background waiting. If you have evidence that you've been assaulted or hit or hurt, please present to us the visual record, and we will trace down that person immediately. We're here to respond to all calls for help, all complaints. If you file a complaint that someone has hit you or slugged you or punched you or thrown a balloon of urine on your face, that is assault. We will prosecute that. Just have that record brought to our officers who are standing by over there on the far side there by the trees, on tables. They have tables. They're waiting to take your complaint. And if you have a complaint, you come over to us. We will secure justice for you. We are here. Our purpose is justice, and we respect you. We respect the people. We respect that you are men and women of honor, and all of you want the best for our country. We know that you have different perspectives, but we respect you, the free people of Tennessee, and we respect you, visitors to our state, who are protected by our Constitution. We welcome you to our beloved city and our beloved county. We ask you to remember that Jesus Christ died for the sins of his people, and he is our God and our safety, and so we count on him for safety. However, we cannot offer safety. We can offer only justice. So again, we welcome you to our city, and we reckon that if there are injuries from some people who are violent, that we will be there. There will be a record of it. And if you are violent and commit a crime and commit any kind of assault or injury to another person, we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. And if you commit a capital offense at this day, we will put you to death. We will put you to death if you commit a capital offense here in our city at this demonstration. So if you have any kind of evil intent in your heart, sir or ma'am, we urge you not to come. We urge you to abstain from these protests. Do not come. If you cannot control yourself, if you cannot be civil, then you, sir, you, ma'am, do not be here. Do not come here, because we will prosecute you. We will find you out. And we have drones circling overhead. Well, no, we don't actually. See, there wouldn't be drones overhead. And so that then the mayor of Shelbyville, the mayor of Murfreesboro, ends her statement, and she leaves it to the people to have a demonstration on both sides. There is no security. No, there's no security, but there's justice. Now, let me ask you this: if that were the way things were in Tennessee, in the future of Tennessee, when we obtain our freedom finally from the state, we attain our freedom from the security state and the police state, do you think there will be violence? Do you not think that if people could count on justice, if they could count on justice after being injured in a public meeting, do you think that they would show up? And do you think that that would restrain those of violent tendencies? Or do you think the opposite? Do you think that that would make things worse? I think it would make things better. The fact that we have a police state makes things worse. I think the fact that we have policing, we have snipers on roofs, as there were reported at these events, government snipers ready to shoot people dead. Can you believe that? Ready to shoot civilians dead in a military operation. Government snipers surveying not Chattanooga, but Tennessee protests. Are we not smarting from that? Aren't we humiliated by this? I think people in Tennessee have been humiliated by the state, and until they recognize that the state has gone past its authority, they will continue blithely being glad about security and safety at these protests. Probably more are planned. This is David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio.